Okay, hi everyone. So this is the second video. All right. So this is just gonna review the essay structure. So please follow the essay structure to help organize the structure your manuscript. Please take note of how each section is organized. Being mindful and thoughtful as you go about writing your ideas down. So phase one. All right. So this is what you're gonna do now. Become acquainted with the content of the essay, take notes, annotate, and note your initial reactions to the essay's content and write this down because this will be data for the second phase of the exercise. And be sure to take thorough and thoughtful notes of your assigned essay. Now, phase two, and this is what you're going to do after you submit this particular paper to me on March 8th. You will use the data you collected for phase one and will be your empirical evidence. If you are still unsure of how to go about doing this, refer to Richard Paul and Linda Elder, The Miniature Guide to Critical Thinking Concepts and Tools. Right. So just asking you when assign the essays to you tomorrow, download it on your device or print it out. All you need to do just now is just review the essay that I am submitting to you. Okay, and then just take some notes and see what you think. And you want to be able to identify themes about like essay structure, essay format, content, tone of voice, meaning like how does the writer sound as you read, right? Is the essay informative? Is the essay argumentative? Because this is the data that you're going to use to write the second essay, but it's also going to help you how to identify elements of a person's writing. And this is why I do the this peer editing exercise, because sometimes when you edit your own paper, because you wrote it yourself, you already have the assumption that you understand what you're writing. But by reading someone else's paper, you have no idea of what they wrote or how they wrote it. So then you have to pay more particular attention to it. Okay. So then that's why I do it this way. And then as you go through this assignment, you might realize that you might have developed some poor writing habits and that you've carried those writing habits through from whenever you started like at junior college or going from high school to Dominguez Hills, and that no one has ever pointed those out to you, right? So then this is one way to learn how to identify those poor writing habits. Okay, now let me just continue. Now notes. All right, so then this is just going to be the assignment that you're going to submit to me next Saturday. So the notes that you have taken will be submitted to me on Canvas. Then these notes are your assignment for this week's module. Once you have completed the notes and annotation, you will submit the data you collected in a standard essay format. And again, but organizing the essay based on the themes that you identified in the essay that I assigned to you. Organize the essay based on the data and themes that you collected, and then once you submit it, it's going to be worth 50 points. Okay, yeah, I'm going to change that once I'm done with the video recording. Okay, so then for part one, what you're going to, before I forget, I do want everyone to write part one, part two, part three, part four, and part five of the essay, because this is part of the essay structure that I'm having you write out. Okay. Now, just to sort of summarize what this paragraph says in part one, is that I want you, I strongly recommend that you do the introduction last, because the introduction is what you're going to tell the reader, which is me, what type of work you did with the essay, right? But then you're also going, but it also works as a roadmap. And by writing out the introduction last and doing the other sections first, that's going to give you some data or evidence, data or information for you to be able to write out the introduction, right? Because Sometimes if you write the introduction first, some students believe that they're wedded or pegged to what they wrote, and then the writing process becomes very frustrating and irritating. So you want to try to avoid that as much as possible by writing out the introduction last. Okay. And again, like I mentioned in the other video, if you have any questions or require any points of clarification or further explanation, please let me know either through email or stop by my virtual office hours or send me an email with days and times that you're available so I can review my schedule and then I can send you a Zoom link and then we can collaborate online. Okay? Because it's important that you should look at your professors as a resource and not necessarily a person that's just giving you busy work because the course or the university demands it. Use your professors as a resource, okay? Because then you'll be able to develop a rapport with your professor. Because as I mentioned before, at least for students that take courses with me, I expect them to go to graduate school. And one of the things that you're going to require when you attend or apply to graduate school is a letter of recommendation. Professors will only write a letter of recommendation for a student if they have at least a good and decent understanding and have consistent interactions with students. All right. And that's the only way that you're going to be able to develop a rapport is by having conversations with your professor inside and outside of the class. Okay. All right. So now let me get back to this. So then this is what you're going to do for part two. Okay. Part two, for this section, you will assess the assigned essay based on the criteria below, and I'm going to go over this in a moment. I will stress this more as the course progresses. When you make a claim, use evidence and examples from the source to substantiate your claims. All right, it's just sort of like with the written exercise of the color black. Most people, or most essays that I read did not provide any type of evidence to any type of claim that they made on how to on how to describe the color black to a person who's born blind. Right? It is your job, or in more academic terminology, it's the onus of proving what you're trying to tell your reader is on your shoulders. So if you make a claim to say, like, for example, the color is black, then you need to figure out or think through to its logical conclusion. What are the different ways that you can describe the color black? And in the rationale that I provided last week, you could use emotion, but explain specifically how emotion relates to color, or how you could use like sensations, right? Or culture, like the color black in Western culture when a person attends a funeral, or in Asian or Eastern countries or cultures where they use the color white. You have to sort of under have an idea of how you're going to present your ideas that make your ideas relatable and understandable to your reader. Okay. And that's what I mean by being mindful and using evidence and also to substantiate your claims. Because my last point that I make here is be mindful of using evidence and examples strategically. And this is something that I know I did as an undergrad student when I first started at junior college and then eventually transferred to UCSB as an undergrad. And then I got added this habit. Because when you're writing, as I mentioned, I think I wrote this before, when you're writing at the university, you're writing for a purpose. When you're reading at the university, you're reading for a purpose. All right. So it's not just busy work that you're doing. You're training your mind how to look for evidence and point critical points in the text. And then when you're writing, you're trying to convey those similar points from the perspective of the author that you're reading, but also in the same time putting in the context that you understand as a writer and as well as a thinker. All right. So then that's sort of the point for this whole the one of the points of the exercise. Okay. So now I'm just going to review these questions. All right. And then and then just another point. This these points that I have here, or like the text that I have under each section, I'm going to say this more than once. I do not want to see any of the highlighted area or the highlighted text in the final essay that you submit. And if I do see it, I'm going to deduct points. Right, because I do not want to see the paragraph or points one, two, three, A, B, C, or the letter I, and the same thing goes for part one and every other section. This information that's under each section is there for you to be able to address. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Right. So now I'm giving you an essay structure that you could use in any other type of class. Right, political science, philosophies, sociology, English, right? But you would have to make certain adjustments to make sure that you fit the criteria, the writing criteria of whatever discipline that you're taking, right? Okay, all right. So I just want to make sure that I don't forget that point because that's very important and critical. Okay, so then what you're going to do is that you're going to identify what is the argument are what argument are you able to identify. Does the person's or the assigned essay that I assign to you tomorrow, can you identify what the argument is? If you can, explain it, identify it, or identify to explain it, and how does the writer present it? Does it make sense? Is it coherent? um do they provide examples, or do they just sort of blow through and saying this is the point and then they just continue without providing any other further detail? All right, because remember, I the modules not too long ago about how to succeed in any course. You need to be able to develop the skills of describing and explaining. The better you are at describing and explaining and being able to put it in a cohesive argument is so much better for you in terms of writing, and then the grades will follow thereafter. All right. Okay, so then the first one is, what argument are you able to identify, and number two, are they effective conveying their argument in the manuscript, meaning that does it make sense, and the things that I mentioned before. Okay, and then the third point or the third paragraph that you're going to write is, what position do they adopt in their argument? And you see here, I have select one below. So you're going to pick one of these three: in favor of the position, against the position, or neutrally approaching the topic. Right. So in favor of a position would be like this political economist by the name of Jagdish Begwadi in Defense of Globalization. And I know it's not this course, but this is just an example of a favored position. And he argues that globalization is the greatest thing since the invention of sliced bread, because globalization has raised living standards, it has spread democracy, it has given more opportunities for women around the world, and a couple of other arguments that he makes. But all the arguments he makes points to the direction that globalization is a good thing, that it's a positive thing, right? The against the position or being critical of the position would be someone like my mentor, William Robinson, who wrote a book on global capitalism, and he's very critical of global capitalism, right? Because he argues, or the argument can be made, that when globalization was first introduced to us, it was presented to us as a new system that would solve a lot of the problems of the 20th century. People would have jobs, people's living conditions would improve, and everyone would be able to have the type of income and social, political, economic, and cultural stability to be able to live a fulfilling life. 30 years later or so, 20 years later or so, that has not come to fruition. So then William Robinson's books are very critical or against certain elements of globalization. Or does the writer or the essay that I assigned to you, do they approach it neutrally? Are they trying to be objective? And if they are, you explain. But then, as I wrote in the lowercase I, yeah, use evidence from the essay to support your claims. Just do not just say yes, the person is in favor of the whatever argument they're saying. That is not sufficient. You need to provide more detail. You need to take that argument to its logical conclusion based on the claim that you're making for this section. Does that make sense? And again, if it doesn't, let me know. All right, because I am here to help you. Okay. So that's what you're gonna do for part two. And then once you're done with that section, then you're gonna go to part three. And this is gonna be a little more extensive. Okay. So then you will use Richard Paul and Linda Elder to complete this section. You are to write 5 paragraphs based on the criteria for identifying the type of thinking according to Paul and Elder. For this section, you will evaluate the peers' approach to their essay. To accomplish this essay section, focus on Paul and Elder's text on the 3 types of character on page 13. You must write a paragraph for each point Paul and Elder provide for each character type. The first paragraph identifies the 3 types of character according to Paul and Elder. And then again, here I wrote select one. Do you, based on your assessment of the assigned essay that I provide for you, is the person an uncritical person? Is the person a self serving critical person? Or is the person a fair minded critical person? So then you go to Paul and Elder's book, go to page 13, look at the 3 types, and then you will notice that they have 3 types of listed at the top. And below them, they have descriptors of what each type of thinker is. And then that is how you're going to organize your paragraphs for this section. Right. And then I wrote an explanation or a description of how you're going to go about doing that here under the 3 points. All right, so each heading has specific descriptor characterizing each critical thinking category. For each point Paul and Elder provide, you are to use those descriptors to write each subsequent paragraph. For instance, the opening paragraph would be on how you classify the writer's thinking: critical, uncritical, self serving, or fair minded. That's the first paragraph. And for example, I say I identify my peer as a fair minded critical person. And, and I will describe and explain why I make that characterization about the essay. All right. And then using evidence to support that claim from the essay. Right. And then once you sort of write that paragraph out, then you're going to go to the second paragraph. All right. And I will show you how and why I make this claim by using the essay's empirical evidence. So then point number 2. And if you go to Paul and Elders, the second point or the descriptor under fair-minded critical person is develops intellectual abilities to serve one interest while respecting the rights and needs of others. So based on this description that they provide, go back to the text and see if that is consistent with how you classify that essay, right? But do not go to like self-serving critical person and then use it under fair-minded critical person, because that is inconsistent and that is not logically correct. All right, because for some of you, if you recall, I did write, what is the logic undergirding or underlying how you make the connection between black and the example that you're trying to convey to your reader on how to describe the color black to a person who's born blind. All right. I'm trying to show you and demonstrate how to be a thoughtful and careful thinker as well as a thoughtful and careful writer. Right? We're all imperfect, but the better you get at doing this, the easier it sort of becomes once you start getting used to this process of writing. All right. And then once you're done with this section or the second paragraph, you're going to go to the third paragraph. And then the descriptor for a fair minded critical person is act as forthrightly as possible, meaning, are they being honest? Are they being forthright? Are they being open? Do they appear to provide ample evidence and ample explanation to be able to convey their points and try not to deceive the reader? Right, because there's a lot of writers out there that deceive readers, right? So this is a way of developing critical thinking skills. All right. Okay, so like hopefully that makes sense. And then you're gonna go again to the fourth paragraph or the fourth point of what Paul and Elder write. And then and for a fair-minded critical person is characterized as results in people being treated reasonably and fairly. You know, meaning like when they're criticizing someone or they're using someone in their essay, are they using them effectively? Does it appear that they're being honest? Does it show that they're being open to another person's perspective, right? And this is how you build critical thinking skills, but also learning how to interpret and analyze written text by taking a systematic approach and breaking down the different identifiable elements based on what Paul and Elder provide in their text that you're using to help you write this essay. Okay, so hopefully it makes sense. And then lastly, the fifth paragraph describes and explains how my peer is an ethical, empathetic, and just. Right. Oh, and again, like I said, we're all imperfect, so then I got to fix that and put the quotation marks there. Um, and then you explain, and then you could select one of these three, right? Ethical, empathetic, or just, and then explain why you would say that they're empathetic based on what you've written here and how you understand that text, right? And you want, again, be able to take your argument to its logical conclusion based on how you read it and how you're able to present these ideas to your reader, not the writer, reader. Okay, and again, hopefully that makes sense. And then lastly, part five. So then this is going to be a little more technical. All right. This is where you're actually going to do some editing. So then this is what I wrote. For this section, you are to evaluate the entire essay, summarize a text and its important skill to develop. Summarizing a text is an important skill to develop. Because when I was in graduate program at UCSB, a professor would ask students to summarize a 200-page book before we were allowed to leave his classroom. And we had to learn how to summarize a text, right? And summarize it like in maybe like 3, 4, 5 sentences, depends on his mood on that particular day. This exercise and this essay is going to help you go in that direction, right? So then we had to learn how to summarize, and this is the first step to learning how to do that. And please focus on Paul and Elder's elements of thought on page 14. Please write 2 paragraphs for each for this section. Paul and Elder lists 8 points of how to evaluate a writer's thinking, but I want you to select only 2. So this is what I mean. And then I'll talk about point 5. So there's like these 8 points on page 14 of Elder's book, The Elements of Thought. Generates purpose, raises question, uses information, utilizes concepts, makes inferences, makes assumptions, generates implications, embodies a point of view. So these are important points to be able to evaluate and read from a text. All right, again, this is another way of developing critical thinking skills. So then, of the 8, I only want you to select 2 of these, right? And I don't care, and it doesn't matter which of the 2, as long as you select 2 of these, right, of the 8. And then this is what you're going to do. And once you identify the 2 points you want to focus on, use the information on page 14, because on page 14 there's like a box with the circle, and then there's descriptions of how Paul and Elder define or characterize each of these points, and then use the descriptors to be able to write about makes inferences or makes assumptions, right? So, for example, I want to write about the purpose of the essay. So, look at how Paul and Elder define generates purpose on page 14. And this is what they're does the writer provide an objective for the essay? Meaning, does the person or the essay that I assigned to them, do they show that they're going to go in a particular direction, and do they stay true, or meaning do they actually follow through with that objective? because when you write an essay, and especially the introduction, you're promising your reader that you're going to show them something significant, about how you think about something or want to them to learn about something. All right. So then it's upon your shoulders to be able to demonstrate how you arrive to those points of understanding within your writing. Right. So because and I shared this with some students that came to visit me last week and the week prior from the two online courses, that one issue that I've noticed, and this is something I did as a student as well, was that students tend to write like they cook spaghetti, right? Because the way that spaghetti is tested is like you take some spaghetti and you throw it against the wall, and whatever sticks means that the spaghetti is done. That's how some students write. They'll throw any type of sentences on the screen, hoping that it makes sense and that the professor will accept what is being said, right? And I'm trying with this, with this exercise and this course, I'm trying to help get students away from that type of writing, because that leads just to frustration and irritation. If you organize your points and you have an idea of what you want to say, then you're able to develop your ideas and make the writing a slightly less stressful. All right. Okay, so let me continue. And so on. The purpose is to show how to apply ideas written by someone else to assess writing and thinking and use empirical evidence. Because as we get closer to the end of the semester, I'm going to stress a lot how you're able to integrate evidence into your argument and making sure that it makes sense in relationship to the claim, to the description, and the argument being made. Right. And that's what we're going to be doing like in the near future to help you prepare to be able to write your final research proposal that's going to be due at the end of the semester. Okay, so all of this stuff does have some reasoning behind it. Okay, and then lastly, what you're going to do is you're actually going to edit like one sentence and one paragraph from the manuscript. And you're going to use Richard Paul and Linda Elder's book, How to Write a Paragraph, a writing manual, and use Purdue OWL to provide information on editing. All right, so then this is what you're going to do. When you begin to write this section, identify a sentence and paragraph that you will edit. Editing is evaluating a writer's technical writing, like finding verb noun agreement, writing thesis statement, effectively selecting accurate words, punctuation, and so much more. When you edit the sentence and paragraph, use Purdue and Paul and Elders as your resources. One of the things that you have to be cautious about is that when you edit, you are editing for clarity and not changing the message that the writer is trying to share with their reader. So when you're editing the essay or the paragraph, you have to make sure you do not alter the message of the paragraph or the sentence, but just making sure that you're trying to clarify what that and ensure that it's effectively being conveyed. All right. So that's the editing part. But all you need to do is just one sentence and one paragraph from any part of the essay. All right. But then be able to describe and explain why you selected it, and then show the editing that you've done. All right. So, because once you've edited the sentence or paragraph, I want you to paraphrase the sentence and the paragraph. And then you're going to use Paul and Elder's book, The Practice, from how to write a paragraph from pages 13 to 16. So, I want you to review those pages from the other book by Paul and Elder and show how to paraphrase and why a writer would want to paraphrase when writing. Be sure to provide the sentences and paragraphs you are editing and going to paraphrase so I could see, and then I could also refer back to the text. All right. And then refer to the module, for example, I provided on editing, paraphrasing a sentence. All right. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, if you have any questions, any points of clarification, please let me know, either stopping by my office hours or stopping by my virtual office hours or sending me an email saying that you want a Zoom appointment. Okay. So I hope this makes sense, and I look forward to reading your essays and speaking with all and any of you that want to speak with me. Okay, so have a good